Welcome to season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this one is for the junior coaches out there, for the developmental coaches out there. Yes, for the parents, yes, for the players, but specifically, coaches, we are targeting you with this episode. And my guest, Aaron Rusnak, is here to talk about the importance of mentoring coach to coach, what mentoring can do for coaches as they're growing their careers in tennis, and what is going on with coach education in the US specifically, but also around the world. I hope, coaches, you will listen to this and take Aaron's words to heart. Parents, I hope you will share this with your children's coach. Players, I hope you'll share this with your coach, because I think it's a really important topic and one that we just don't talk about enough. So I'm excited for Aaron to be here to share his knowledge and experience with all of you and to give you some insights into the work he's doing as a mentor to coaches in his facility, but also around the world, frankly. Before I bring Aaron on, really quickly, I just want to remind you guys, we are more than a podcast. We are more than a Facebook group. We are more than an Instagram account. We are more than a website. We offer one-to-one consulting with families, and I would love the opportunity to talk with you to help guide you through this crazy junior tennis journey, the college recruiting process. And we do it all at a very reasonable price point. So I hope you will consider having a conversation with me. You can learn more about that through our website. I'll have a link in the show notes. Also, I will have links to everything that Aaron talks about in this episode in the show notes. So please be sure and check those out. You can do that on our website or wherever you're consuming this podcast. And one final thing, we still have a few spots available for our Spain trip this summer. We have new dates, July 4th through 13. We are going to Barcelona and Mallorca to the Rafa Nadal Academy. It is going to be a phenomenal experience. And this trip is open to junior players. Parents and families can join. We have pricing options for all of those things. So if you are interested, please reach out to me, Lisa at ParentingAces.com, and I will get all that info into your hands ASAP. All right, that's it for me. I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Coach Aaron Rusnak. Aaron, welcome back to the podcast. It's great to see your smiling face on this Tuesday morning. It is really early for me to be doing this, especially with the recent time change. But by the time this airs, all that's going to be behind us. So anyway, I am waking up. I've got my second cup of coffee here, and hopefully it's going to kick in soon as we have our conversation about mentoring and the importance of coaches mentoring coaches.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a very, I don't want to say hot topic, but a much needed topic. I think some people are starting to finally catch on that we got to really take care of the coaches we have now in the game, and those that are coming into the game, also giving them proper support that they need, whether it's through continuing education standpoint or also just wherever they're working at, having the right culture to breed coaches helping each other, as opposed to kind of being one person on an island and they just do their own things and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely much, much, much needed for sure.
Absolutely. So before we jump into this topic, which, by the way, is something I have been preaching pretty much since the get-go of Parenting Aces, as I met and hung out with a bunch of coaches and, realized that there's so much great knowledge and wisdom out there. And, up until now, there really hasn't been a mechanism for coaches to share that. So we'll jump into that in a second. But before we do that, I wanted to just give you a chance, for those who missed our last podcast episode, to introduce yourself and let our audience know a little bit about your background in the sport.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. So yeah, like I said, my name's Aaron Rusnak. I've been teaching tennis and coaching it for about 30 years this year. I've been doing it. I've coached at the college level as a head coach. I've basically coached, regional, national ranked players. I also played on the professional circuit from 2002 to 2008. Last year, I was actually privileged enough to work with Dominic Thiem's team for a week out in Austria. I was asked to do that by his dad, Wolfgang. So I got a chance to kind of see at the highest level of our game, kind of what it kind of takes in that aspect. I've been the last 15 years actually mentoring other coaches at other, at facilities I've worked at and other facilities around. And then for 12 years, I had a program that was one of the largest programs in the Midwest region. I had almost close to 700 kids in a program of mine that I developed from the ground up. That turned into a lot of kids winning a lot of state titles, college scholarships and stuff like that through the program. So I'm really proud of that because there's a lot of work involved, and also the team that helped me along the way as well. I can't, I might have been the director of the program, but I also had a great staff along my side helping me along the way at that time as well. So.
And where are you located these days?
I live in Elmhurst, Illinois, but I'm based out of basically my main facilities, Five Star Tennis Center, which is in Plainfield, Illinois. I do still work a little bit up north from where I live in that, which is in Northbrook region in that. So I've been in the North Shore area for probably about 24 years. And at Five Star here currently, I've been there now just actually as of this month, 4 years. So
wow.
I just basically have been promoted to a director of what they call private instruction. It's kind of nothing. It's something that I don't know any other club's ever done before, but I've been mentoring the staff for the last 4 years. And basically my owners, Robin and Dan, had basically said, hey, why don't we actually put you under a title for this? Because part of my title before was under performance, which was the training aspect, because I also do personal training. So, but they just said all the knowledge that you have and you're so willing to come out and help so many staff members on court or behind the scenes. So they just figured that would be great for me to have that kind of assistance of putting the right private lessons with the right coaches, and then any coaches, having any issues with development, or whether it's, developing a proper plan for development for the players, I can sit down with the coaches and do that. Or if it's, say dealing with parents and that, helping to educate the parents in that, because as you know yourself, and that everyone has their own, their child's, dreams or aspirations are different. So understanding, the power of just really empowering the parent too, to understand that, you're part of the team. You're not, like my thing is I always tell like the coaches I work with now, it's like, you want the parents with you. They're part of the team. Think of it's like, when you see the pros, when they have a team of people, they all want to see that person succeed. So if we educate the parents of kind of like what their role is, what we need them to, what their job is to do as a parent, we as a coach, what we're responsible to do and stuff like that. So trying to creating that good relationship, parent, player, or son or daughter, and then obviously coach and parent and child relationship, I think is really important to kind of make things more, work in harmony. So yeah, that's part of what I've been doing here. I've been actually I started like January 2nd. So I'm a few months in, and that has already been doing a lot of good stuff with the staff I have there. And I'm very grateful that the culture of the staff that we have is very much about learning and helping each other. So that's been really, really beneficial. So yeah, that's kind of what I've up to speed so far. And then, like I said, I do my online coaching thing, it's called Innovation Tennis Coaching. So it's something actually before COVID hit, I wrote a book that I wrote from basically like at that time, 20 some odd years of experience, but it was a book that was to help coaches become better coaches. And I had so much stuff involved in it that a lot of the published companies didn't want to do it because there was just too much work, or they wanted to charge me like a god awful amount of money to produce it. So one day, as my wife will know, one day at like 5 a.m, I wake up like Christmas morning with a smile on my face, and she woke up and she's like, why do you have a grin on your face? And I'm like, I have an idea. I'm like, I'm going to make my book into an online platform that coaches can get assistance from, so that they can help their players or help their help their clubs, whatever their niche is at their club. Really feel like I'm empowering them and giving them the tools they need to get better. So
that's amazing. That is amazing. And on top of all that, you find time to publish weekly video posts on Instagram, you write regular articles on LinkedIn, and I love that you always tag me, because it reminds me that I got to go and check it out. So I appreciate that.
No problem.
And you're constantly sending me inspirational videos, which is great too, and kind of keeps me in the loop with where you're going with what you're thinking and what you're planning and the work you do. So I do appreciate all that constant back and forth that you and I have had over the last couple years. And, this whole idea of coaches mentoring coaches, I believe, is something that's been sorely missing across much of the US. It's something that exists in other countries. We've seen at the professional level and even at the collegiate level, players from other countries staying at the top of the game, getting to the top of the game and holding on to their spots, whereas the American players, over the past 15 years or so, have really been struggling with that. And in my mind, yes, our culture has changed, our society has changed, but where we have fallen behind in American tennis, to me, is in the realm of coach education and coach support. So I want you to talk a little bit about what inspired you to kind of move from the individual coaching aspect, which you still do, into coaching the coaches.
Yeah. So really so a couple of things there. I mean, what you stated, and I totally 1000% agree on it because, um, I'll answer your question, but to go off of what you just said, I feel like because I've been teaching for 30 years, but before that, I was also a player. And knowing, the only mentor, and I've said this to many coaches, only mentor I had growing up was my coach who developed me. Outside of that, throughout my whole work career, I didn't have any mentors. It's all about me searching for knowledge. And just because I'm really passionate, I want to help so much, I'm willing to kind of do whatever it takes to help my kids. And I just felt like, teaching in the 90s and the early 2000s, for example, it was a lot of times where there's amazing coaches, but they were like in lock and key of what they do. And they didn't want to share anything, where me, it was like, I was like an open book. Like if someone comes to me, I was like, to me, it was about, it's not about me. It's about helping the player because part of my mindset, going forward is one of my things I preach a lot to the coaches is that, like, for example, I have say 40 on average, I have 40 clients a week that I work on a one-to-one basis. So I said, okay, 40 people I get to an impact. But I said, say if I work with 5 coaches and they all have 40 players, pardon me, and I help them become a better coach, I'm impacting more people than I can by myself. So it's like and then the other thing too, as you know, is that if you show a lot of times some of these coaches, they just got to have someone know that they believe in them and they have their back, that when there's something that maybe they're having difficulty with, that there's someone there that's able to support them. I had that yesterday with 2 different coaches where I work at, where one was both actually with backhand issues. One was a tactical thing using their backhand. Another one's an actual technical thing with their backhand. And, they both laughed how I immediately just saw what was going on and was able to correct it right away. But they feel confident and comfortable that knowing that I'm not judging them too. I'm not judging them that, oh, you don't know how to do this, or, you only know how to do this one way. It was more so they know that I'm coming in with with a big heart to them, like a big brother, where I'm here just to help. I'm not here to put you down. I'm not here to make you look bad. I'm here to assist you and understand that all it is about helping you become a better coach and helping your player. Because if I help you become a better coach, it grows your confidence in the ability of what you're doing out there, which then makes what you're doing as a product better for those that you impact. So that's just my mindset. I've changed it's actually about 15 years ago when I started mentoring my first coaches. And I really enjoyed it because it was literally like, even this past month, I had one coach, and I posted on LinkedIn where a coach had been teaching a lot longer than me. And he came to me before a staff meeting. He's like, I'm literally stuck. I'm racking my brain. This girl's doing this, this, and this. I cannot. He goes, I've literally tried like 11 things. I have no idea what else to do. So he explained to me, I never got to see her. He just explained to me what was going on. And what I did is I shot a video at the end of my night. I shot like a 3-step phase that if she gets this part right, you go to this part. And if this goes right, then you go here. And then all of a sudden 2 days go by. I didn't see him. I didn't know when he had a lesson with her because he didn't tell me that. And then he comes out in the middle of one of my lessons with his hands up like Rocky Balboa. And he's like, she did it. Oh my God, like it worked. And I'm so excited because now the dad's also really happy because everything else was improving, but this one particular thing was just holding her back. And he was like, I'm just literally racking my brain. And he goes, I'm like looking up stuff. He goes, I'm even going to my old books from when I used to study and I couldn't find the right thing. And he goes, it was just funny how he was like, I just described you and you were able to figure out what it was. And I just told him, I said, the biggest components for me, I said, whether it was me as a coach and I'm working with a player or me with a coach is, as you know, is just listening to what they need and just understand how the coach likes to coach. So that's the other thing too, is like when I'm working with a player, I listen to the player, how they take in information and how they learn, so that best educates me how to proceed forth and whatever we're working on. Well, the same thing happens when I'm working with a coach, because I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to make them just like a player. I'm not trying to make the player play like me. I'm also on the coach point. I'm not trying to make the coach be me. They're their own unique, they have their own unique qualities. My thing is listening to how they try to get the message across their player and start to kind of open up their brain to think about other creative ways that they have in them, but they maybe don't think of it that way, or they've never thought enough on it, and say, hey, have you ever thought of this? Or a lot of times I ask a lot of questions to them. Well, one of the people that was really actually, she was a mentor from far behind, because she really challenged me years ago, was a lady named Emma Doyle. So she asked a question to me at one time that forever sank in with me, because I already was doing it, but not to the degree that she asked me. And one of the things she said to me as a coach, she goes, I want to see you be able to one time give a lesson and give no direct, um, basically feedback, give all indirect stuff, nothing but questions. See if you can do that. And I normally teach like that, but I notice there's sometimes I want to start to say, well, this was great, but that, when I start asking more questions. So I actually take that similar philosophy into the coaching realm, as opposed to me going in there and just trying to fix things, kind of like being a parent. And, as I have my kid, it's like, if I'm always fixing things, I'm really not helping them. I'm making myself feel good, but I'm not helping them feel good, actually. So it's like with the coach, I'm thinking, okay, if there's ways that I can actually help them understand themselves even better and what they're really good at, and then maybe things that they're not as strong at, know that it's okay. And like in my aspect, when I work with these coaches, I'm not judging you. There's many things over my years. I'm not the same coach I was 10 years ago, and and so on. As gaining with experience of dealing with individuals, dealing with parents, dealing with whatever is environment that you're at, culture of the club you work at. There's a lot of things to say also about clubs and stuff. That's something that I learned working with more play coaches around the area, that a lot of it also comes down to the kind of the culture that the club has created. Is it nurturing, like where I'm at 5 star, where we help each other out? Is it a team atmosphere, or is it everyone for themselves? And I think when we work that way, it's very hard, especially if someone's new to the industry, or even if someone's been doing it for a long time. But like that one gentleman who was stuck, he's going to feel like he has no one to go to. And that's what breaks my heart, is because it's like, if we're making better coaches, we make better players, which in hand, tennis thrives more, especially here in the US. It'll make our players much better and have better results sooner on. And as you know, for how long you've been doing this, and also as a parent, you see a ton of kids with a lot of potential early on, and they get burned out. And we have to think, okay, why is that happening? Is it coming from the parent side? Is it coming from the coaching side? Or maybe the parents are great and maybe even the coach is great, but maybe the environment, the training is not the right environment for them. There's so many things. I've been actually doing some stuff actually on LinkedIn with a couple parents actually from overseas, and there was a dad from the UK that I've been helping in that, just helping out, giving him guidance with his daughter, 16-year-old daughter, that she was actually going out of the country to go to different countries to find the right environment and training, because of where they lived in the UK. She just was not getting the attention or the seriousness behind what she needed. So I had to help guide that way, and actually had a conversation with them via LinkedIn like a week ago, just that they found the right place. She's in a good mental state, physical state, performing well, and she's very happy, and results are going really well for her. But it's like, when you look at that stuff too, then I also say, I'm happy for the girl that she found what she needed, and the parents also happy as well, that, the time and money is well spent, that their kids getting what they really deserve. But at the same time, then I'm thinking, okay, well then, in the environment that he shared, a lot of it was, coaches were like obsessive of like, this is my player, don't talk to my player, like the things that he shared with me. And it's like, that stuff I actually experienced myself in my early years of coaching, back in the 90s. In the late 90s is when I started. And where it'd be basically, I remember when I was like teaching for 2 years, and there was this really highly level coach, and I went over and I just mentioned something to the player, because it was a girl and she was super frustrated. And he literally walked over to me in front of her and says, don't talk to her. And I was just like, I'm just here to help her. It's like, I'm not trying to steal a lesson. That's not how I was raised. That's not who I am. It's like and it was just shocking when that was treated that way. Cause then I was like, okay, well then it was like, then it creates like that environment, like, okay, where can I be myself? And then how can I share what I know, or maybe what I see? And maybe, as you and I could be coaches, and we're seeing a player, and we could be seeing the same thing, but maybe the way that you say it, it sinks in more than the way I say it. But all that matters is the kid got it, and now they have confidence in what they need to get better at, and they're empowered to do it. So which then goes back to the coaching for me is like, in the past 15 years, so many coaches have worked at, coaches just new to the industry. Coaches been doing it for like 5 to say 8 years, and that everybody has what I call like their comfort zone. As you know, it's like their comfort zone of the level of tennis they work with, or there's a certain thing in that. And the one thing I've really tried to like broaden a lot of the coaches is that, don't always have to just get your perspective or information from one entity. You can get it from multiple things because everybody learns differently. So it's like, as I've shared with you before, my son, he has learning challenges. So he goes to special school, very high IQ. He's like dyslexic and a bunch of other stuff. But for him, it's like, even with him, it's like his hardest thing is math. So it's like, you could try to teach him normal math like any other kid, and it goes in one ear and out one ear, not because he's not listening, it's hard for him to focus that way. But he has special teachers that understands how he learns. So they're able to design a certain program that allows him to access and give him the proper tools to be successful, not just in math, but in life. So that's my thought process. And on the coaching side, we assist coaches. We're empowering them to know the right path for them. And I think that's the thing too. I've talked to, Simon over at the USTA. I've talked to last year at the PTR convention and a few other coaches that I think what's also happening, and I don't know how you feel about this, Lisa, but I'm also finding the more I talk with coaches is a lot of times coaches go take a job because there's a job opening, and it's whether it's a director's position, non-director's position, and they get in that position, and then it's like, I almost feel like they don't know their way. They don't know a pathway of, okay, this is where I'm at, but I want to aspire to do this. How do I get there? And there's either no one there that's done it before to give the knowledge back to help them that way, or there's all this red tape that only wants them to be in this one box, and that's all we want you for. We don't want you to go into the ladies drills or the men's stuff or the kid, whatever it is. They kind of like exclude them from that. So that's where part of it is, like when I'm talking to some of these coaches, it's like, just I think a lot of it's also just that culture that they take a job at, and it's like, I'm not here to badmouth any club or anything, but I just think sometimes just like an environment for a kid, sometimes you get in an environment that you think is well and you're excited as a new employee, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, like I'm going to be stuck here, and for the next 10 years, I'm not growing, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I actually myself experienced it at one point, because the one facility I was really successful at, my one discussion with my wife, and that was, I was there for 12 years, and she felt by like my 7th year that I outgrew the place and that I needed to move on. And the thing was, because I was excelling in my programs and everything else, but there's other things that I was interested in, but I just was never venturing out to do it. And it just took me actually leaving there to actually understand how much stuff that I could be doing now, that I'm now trying to embark now at this time in my life. Just like, wow, there's other things I could have been doing earlier, but I have no regrets. It's a learning experience, even for myself, but like I said, I think it's just something that from a coach's perspective, I just really feel that if coaches know they're not being judged, that they're just being supported, and they have the proper support around them, I think that could be a huge game changer for the culture of the way they give their lessons, the way the culture is created in their facility, because it's like, I give like I give like monthly staff information between me and one of the other directors of development where I'm at. And the last discussion I had was about all the coaches. I said to them, even though I'm a director and you have like 5 other directors, I said, but I want you guys all to understand, you all here are leaders. You actually lead by example, and you lead each other through everything here. I said, so just because you don't have a title does not mean that you're not important. I said that everyone here has the ability to make a difference, and I said, the way you want to look at it is that something that was said to me a long time ago was, what type of legacy do you want to leave with your members, with your clients, with your staff members, and that, how do you want to remember? Do you want to be remembered as the person that's very professional and caring and have empathy? Or do you want to remember someone who's just stealing students? Like, how do you want to, what type of reputation do you want to have? And, and I said to him, I said, everyone here has their own gifts and talents, and understand that everyone's voice here is important. I said, everyone's voice here needs to be listened to, so that's part of my thing is like, I especially with my younger staff, I've been doing like a lot of meetings, And it's not me talking to them. It's more just listening to, where they want to go. What's their pathway? Is this something that they want to just do for a little while, and then maybe they have a degree in something, they want to do something else, and just understanding them, like what are they inspiring to do, in tennis, and for me in my venture of this is just trying to find ways to make tennis thrive. And I really feel it's at the core, it's with the coaches, and I feel like USPTR and USPTA/RSPA, and it's like I feel like they're now starting to do these like coaches mentoring things and stuff. They just started, I believe last year. They both started doing it, and I know the USTA started to do a thing this past year where they have like younger coaches that get selected to train, at the National Training Center in Florida. But it's like I think those things are great. But my thing is, I feel like, as you know, there's coaches need a couple different ways. I look at they need either a person as a coach that coaches them all the time, or they need a mentor that they can call whenever whenever they need something or kind of in a runt. And then the thing I learned the other day that I think I need to work on actually is finding a sponsor, that actually will do my bidding for me, to understand that I will come to the bat and I'll help out wherever I go. So it's like like last month I got to speak at this coaches conference, and that was a bunch of high school and college coaches. We had about 400 coaches, and I've done it in the past, but it was probably one of my most rewarding ones because every time I did it, I did something a little bit different. And this one in particular, I really listened to a lot of the coaches and a lot of their issues before I approached, because I actually got pulled in last minute. I was supposed to do it next year, but the head coach at Notre Dame pulled out last minute. So the one guy, Dan, knows I can kind of think on the fly pretty quick, and within a week's time, I put, content together to help the coaches. And I know the organizers, they really loved it. They said it was probably one of the best presentations they've ever had there. And I really felt it from the coaches, because one of the things I talked about was, a lot of things I see also is on the coaching side is some coaches have this mentality that screaming and yelling gets through to the players and makes them better players. And, you got to be tough and, eat nails and all kinds of stuff, and whether it be high school or college, it was something.
To be fair, there are players that do respond to that. There are kids, especially as they get a little older, that do respond well to that, but it's not for everybody.
Right. No, and that's the thing too. I totally agree. My thing, what I showed in my presentation with all the coaches, was kind of similar to what Emma's thing was, how I actually teach myself, is asking questions. And whenever the kids would make mistakes in these certain things, I had different type of stations and movement and stuff within a game-based situation. And I would say to them, like, okay, what did you learn there? If you could do it again, what would you do differently? And Lisa, every time I fed the ball, we played the next point out, whatever it was, they made the next shot. They didn't miss it. So I was teaching the coaches that if you give them a chance, a lot of the kids, when they've taken enough knowledge from observation or learning and having good coaching, they can think for themselves. Sometimes it's just more of a reassurance thing that, okay, because that's why I like the question part, just because it makes them think, because especially nowadays, some of the kids are so used to the scrolling of Instagram or what else, that their focus is shorter. So it's like, if I ask them a question, as Emma Doyle used to say, it's like the power of the pause. They got to pause and actually think about what you're asking them of what just happened. And if they could do it again, what would you do differently? And that's kind of how my approach is, even to helping coaches, is like, I told them, I said, in my 30 years, as there are certain things I could look back and go, and I could have done something a little bit different. Absolutely. By all means, I'm not perfect. I think, it's one of those things where, I'm accepting of my faults, and understand that there's things I always have to improve on. And I always tell the coaches, I'm like, like the one coach I helped yesterday, he's like, I've been trying for like literally 6 months to get this thing to happen. And, and it wasn't, you come up there in like 30 seconds, you fix it with one little thing. And then immediately, the boy was hitting better backhands. And I just told him, I said, it's just because I've been doing it so long, I knew exactly what to look for. But before I went in and did anything, I asked him, what does it feel like when you're hitting? And he's like, I feel like I'm always really too close or too tight to the ball. And as soon as I said, I'm like, do this with your one arm. And all of a sudden, immediately, he just started ripping the backhand. And I asked him, how did it feel? And he's like, effortless. I'm like, that's what we're going for. Feel like you're effortless.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing too, right? Is when you ask the question, and let me just say, Emma Doyle is amazing. And she has been on this podcast. And I've had the opportunity to be at conferences with her and see her in action. She's unbelievable. I love this notion of asking the question, and sort of forcing the coach, in your case, or the player to take that pause. And that's a lesson I learned in yoga decades ago, is the power of the pause, right? There's so much we can learn when we sit with something in silence for a moment, several moments, hours, days, whatever. But,
Absolutely.
you have to give yourself permission to take that break and reflect and be honest with yourself about what you can do better. And I think that's really important, not just for junior players, but for coaches as well. I
Yeah.
want to kind of talk a little bit about, Aaron, coaching education across the world, because we are one of the few countries that I know of that tennis coaching is not approached in the same manner as other professions, where you go through an education period, you go through an apprentice period, and then you're set free to work your magic on the tennis court. Other countries have actual education for people that are interested in becoming tennis coaches. And there are different levels of that education based on whether you want to coach recreational players, you want to coach high performance juniors, you want to coach professionals. And I just feel like we are missing this great opportunity to provide that same level of education and knowledge to coaches here. What are you hearing and seeing around that in the US?
Again, you're spot on, Lisa. I agree, because everyone that I know, even from my days of playing, when I was traveling, playing the circuit, and you meet other players, a great example when I was playing, the Tennis Australia would send like 5 Australians to play in the US during the times when I was playing futures. And it would be interesting because I'd talk to the coach, and there was a gentleman at the time who was a player. His name was Rafael Durek. He was at the time like top 90 in the world. His coach at the time was actually Tony Roach, but this traveling coach was helping him and the 4 other players. And it was interesting to talk to him back then. And this is when I was in my early 20s at the time, coaching tennis, trying to support my playing tennis, But it was one of those things where interesting back then. So that was like 2002. To hear what that coach had to do is exactly what you said. There was literally a progressional step by step of what the coach had to be able to do. And I think the thing that you point out really well is that whether it was listening to him or a couple of Frenchmen that I know, and that that went through the French system, and that like you said, you have to kind of make a choice of like kind of what path you might be leading to, and that kind of gears you through the educational, going to the type of university that you have to go through in that. Here we do have our university. We have Ferris State, we have Hope, we have a few other schools as well that do it. But in my personal opinion is that normally they use USPTA or USPTR as their, we'll say, governing body of education, and where they get certified for, which is completely fine. But my take is that if you're going to school for it, one, figure out maybe where you'd like to specialize. Like last summer, I had a couple of people from Ferris State that did apprenticeship stuff at 5 Star. And we have a couple of people coming this summer from Hope College, and that. So it's great. So you get to work with the young up and coming coaches and that, and they get a chance to kind of see what it is that we're at a pretty large facility that we have. But the thing that I would love to see, in my opinion, is more education, more methodologies than just one methodology of how to do something. Because
right.
My feeling is, and this has always been my thing, and it's partially why I go back to the way like I personally coach, or I've talked to coaches about, is that when I listen to a player, from listening to a player, I then have a better understanding of how they learn. And then if I understand that, then I know what is maybe the right methodology or approach to take with them. But the thing, as I said, I always tell the kids when I'm teaching kids, I'm like, you want to build the biggest toolbox you can, as many tools as you can. You might have some tools that are better than others, but as many tools as you can, so you always can be as competitive. You may not win, but you're at least going to compete. Where I'm like the same thing with a coach. I feel like if you have a lot of tools in your toolbox, you always give yourself the best chance to help that player, wherever level they are, whatever else. That is what I'm running into, me personally, is when I have certain coaches are certified in only one particular thing, and maybe they're very high in that. Maybe they're a master pro at PTR. What else? And I have one of those I work with that. Great, unbelievably educated, smart individual. But then it's like, that's the only.
Yes, but let me interrupt 1 second,
Yep.
Aaron. One thing I learned though is these certifications do not test knowledge around developing junior players. They do not test knowledge around taking a player from 10 and unders to college or beyond. And so what good is that certification to the parent who is looking for a coach to develop their child when that coach wasn't ever tested on their knowledge of how to develop a player? And I think that's criminal, quite honestly, that our certifying organizations in our sport don't test for knowledge on developing a player from the very beginning all the way through the process.
No, I agree, because I do agree with that, because I'm thinking of just an overview. I can even speak of myself. So my coach, like I said, he was one of my main mentors as a kid. Was when I started teaching tennis, as a job. I actually worked for him at a facility. I was at I was in a high performance program, and he put me teaching basically back in the 90s, there was no red ball, but it was all like the little kid stuff. And he said to me, he's like, he goes, I know you could do any level here and help me with. He's like, but if you can't see, might see what's wrong, but if you don't know how to fix it and know the stages throughout the course of that progress of their development, then I, as a coach, I'm not helping you become a better coach. So I owe that to my own coach on that aspect. And obviously things were done differently in the 90s, but that was
Right.
something that my coach stepped up and said, hey, like, I know you could help me do high level and this, that, or whatever, and do these things. It's great and fine and dandy. And I was certified through PTR at the time. And he just said, he's like, but I want you working with the little kids. So, I mean, he literally, at least he even stuck me in a class that I will never forget. It was noon to 1 on Saturdays. It was kids who had ADD. All kinds of different things. I had a kid in a wheelchair that had a racket built in his mouth, like a mouthpiece to hit. Like, I had like 6 kids and one helping lady from the school, and they had like Asperger's and like all these different things in that. Anyways, talk about having to think on my head and like literally like on my feet, and I have to know how to like each week make this so that each one is enjoying the game and actually getting better. So they feel like they're actually like not just having fun, but they're getting better at what they're doing, which becomes more fun. But I
Right.
totally agree with what you're saying, because that's the
But
thing.
it's Aaron, it's not even just watching the kid and learning how to correct things and help them progress.
Mhm.
It's also understanding the competitive pathway, understanding how USTA tournaments work, how UTR events work, how the ITF works, how college recruiting works. I mean, coaches are not educated and tested on that knowledge before they're allowed, and I'm putting that in quotes, allowed to go out there and impact these kids who have these high performance goals.
Agreed. No, I do agree. Totally. Without a doubt, because that's something I know even in the years I've been doing, we'll say even the last, say, 15 years, this is before UTR came out, but just as far as USTA, as you know, USTA almost every year is changing rules.
Thank
So,
you.
every year there's something new, or sometimes in the middle of the season, they change something, of how, certain levels this and, what we're eliminating this level, or, whatever it may be, they're changing. And it's like, I just remember when I was at the facility for 12 years, I had one of the ladies who was like a board of director of USTA and ran like massive tournaments. And like, her name was Patty, sweet lady. And that was like, every time I was like, what changed? Because she was always in the known before it ever was even posted what was being changed. Because she'd always be like, yeah, this is changing. This rule is changing. But it helped us, not just myself, because she would let the staff know. It would help us because we had so many high level players, especially the kids that are, like you said, have a more pathway of competing at high school and beyond. It's like, it's much better that we're more educated, because then if a parent comes to us, and especially, as you know, if they're a parent that's never played before and they have nothing how many parents are out there have never played the game of tennis and their kid loves tennis, and then they're looking for your guidance. And then if you have no answers, then they're like, why am I paying all this money? They don't even know. And then I'm navigating through the USTA website or whatever website and trying to figure these things on my own. It can be really frustrating or overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, we have a whole section on our website about navigating the USTA website, and I mean, that's sad to me that something like Parenting Aces needed to create this vehicle to help parents better understand how our national governing body works. And yes, there have been improvements over the years with the USTA website making it a little easier. But the reality is the coaches don't even know this stuff. And if the coaches don't know this stuff, how are the parents going to learn it? And if the parents aren't learning it, they're wasting time and money. And it's really a shame. Who suffers from that are the players themselves, because they're not getting the instruction they need. They're not playing the level of tournament that is appropriate for where they are in the developmental pathway. They're not approaching college recruiting in the right manner. They're not learning the skills necessary to find success in this world of junior tennis and college tennis. And it all goes back, in my opinion, to coaches being educated on this stuff. And whose responsibility is that? Well, we do have a national governing body. So you would think it would be the responsibility of USTA to ensure that everybody out there calling themselves a tennis coach or a tennis teacher has this basic knowledge to help families have a better experience through this journey.
Yeah, I think, Lisa, I totally agree. I think there has to be that connection between not just the technical, the tactical, the on-court stuff. There's also, as you know, the stuff behind the scenes, like the tournaments. It's like, for example, like with my own kids in that, like there's certain parents that they're like, I can't watch my kid. So I literally, like, someone just gets so nervous, or they get so emotionally involved in the match. So, like a lot of them, I use a guy, his name's Andy Durham. He does tennis
We're
rackets.
good friends with Andy here,
Yeah.
Parenting Aces.
Yeah, Andy's amazing. He's actually a mentor of mine. He's actually one of my mentors. And one of the things that I talk about is I love when I give them that app, or it's whether it's him or any other apps that I have. It keeps the parent busy, because if I can't be at the tournament, at least then when I'm getting that PDF of what's going on, I know exactly what happened in that situation. And I keep a log on it, because then I'm going to say, okay, is this a one-off, or is this starting to become a pattern that this is something that the kid maybe he's not showing in group class or showing the private, but it's becoming some reason, maybe from a mental standpoint. Maybe it's a mental block. Maybe they're feeling the anxiety or pressure of certain situations, and then it helps me that way. I just helped the coach recently because there was a player who was having some mental challenges in competing in that, and these like level 4s and 5s and stuff at their level and that, and is starting to feel more pressure. As the level goes up, the competition gets better. So
Yeah.
they're having trouble dealing with some of this stuff. And, me using different other, apps to use, journaling, actually JY's journal is one of the things that I have them purchase that, but it gives them a chance to, voice their feelings and emotions in a journal. But then on the app side, using some of the different apps that I have them use, it gives me also a chance to understand them more about maybe in those moments what they're thinking about. But I think the other thing too, Lisa, and I don't know how you feel, I agree with everything you've said thus far. And I think also the other aspect is understanding that as a coach, it's a privilege of what we do, and it's not a job, it's a career. We're supposed to be a professional in what we do. So to be a professional in what we do, we have to try to be the best that we can and be in all aspects. We might have our strengths and weaknesses in certain things, but feel like that, if I'm working with your child, that I truly have the best interest for your child, not for me, but for your child, and communicate that to them so they know I believe in them and I'm giving them the best support of my knowledge. And then as you as a parent, supporting you the best that I can to understand that not only is my kid getting the best on-court support, but I'm also, as a parent, getting the best off-court support, which hence goes into what you're saying. I think when we do that, like I said at the very beginning of our conversation, is that's where the relationship becomes very great for everybody's, because if I was working with your child, you and I have a great relationship, understanding where I want to take your son, what he wants, what his aspirations are. We have things in place of what we're going to try to do. I don't want to say goals, but because goals can change depending on how quickly things go, so we can adjust as needed. But then also helping you through, okay, this is where he's just starting out playing. Okay, these are the tournaments we're going to start going. Stay local. Don't go crazy chasing points, and also stay local. Let's see how they do here. Just doing team cup, all these different things that they could be doing, but educating you of like what would be best for him, so that he enjoys it, he's thriving, he's improving. The things that we're doing in a private setting or a group setting is actually transferring to when it counts when he goes to a tournament. So, are they going to have sometimes bad tournaments? Sure. We're all human beings. But even in those not so great positions in that, there's always something to learn from it, whether it be the coach, you as the parent, the player. But it's like, I think that
But that all requires the coach having that knowledge. And this is, we go back to that, Aaron, is the education. If you're talking about, play local, don't travel, play these team events, maybe, play junior team tennis. But as the coach, you have to know about that stuff. You have to know that stuff exists and how to guide the parent to finding those opportunities and how to guide the parent through registering for those opportunities. If you as the coach don't know this stuff, you can't share it. And this is what is happening across the country. Parents are left flailing, trying to understand what opportunities are available to their kids, trying to figure out how to navigate signing up for a tournament, joining a team event, even getting to play high school tennis. And it's just heart-wrenching to me when I talk to parents who are like, my kid's now 16, wants to play college tennis, but we don't know what to do here. And to me, that's where this coach education comes in and where this coach mentoring comes in and why it's so important what you're doing. As we start to wind this up, Aaron, I want to just give you an opportunity to share how parents can get in touch with you and how coaches can get in touch with you if they want to further this conversation or they want to enlist your services.
Sure. No, thank you, Lisa, for your time. As always, it's always a pleasure. By all means, I'm very grateful. So like I said, my name is Aaron Rusnak. You can reach me on my cell. It's 708-471-5416. The other way you can kind of check out a little bit of my work is at innovationtenniscoaching.com. On there, I'll also have my email address, which is pretty much innovationtenniscoaching@yahoo.com. And those would be my best ones there. Obviously, Instagram, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm always posting there, also on LinkedIn as well under Aaron Rusnak. As Lisa described in here, I'm always trying to kind of post, updates, whether it's me working with my own personal clients, working with other coaches, or other things I think that's just very knowledgeable for, just as a supporting of each other. Because I think that's just something that we need more of, is just supporting each other. And I think, obviously, Lisa, the great work that you do, I think is helping an amazing amount of parents. There's so many parents that, even when I work with a new player, I actually tell them, check out this podcast. I think you're going to find it very beneficial. And actually, to be honest with you, what's great is when I actually say, even talk about your podcast, they will listen to many different people's podcasts, and it creates great dialogue between me and the parent. And sometimes they also get the kids included, going, "Hey, I want you to listen to this podcast." And for them, they will listen to a podcast for most of them more than to read a book. So, I think them putting it on in their, in their beats or something and that and listening to, I think is beneficial. But I think what you nailed home today, and that I think is just something that, I'm very passionate about, is making better coaches. I think the education can always improve. I think, as even overseas, which I think they're doing a lot of great things. I think if you look under any microscope, we can always keep getting better at something, but I think that's something that what you brought up today, I think is very much needed, is not just the education of how to teach a better forehand or a better technical thing or tactical thing, but also the communication, how to have communication skills. That's the other thing too. I don't know if you've had that too, where it's not just the tournaments. It's not just.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
It's a constant theme of this podcast.
Yeah. The communication is like a thing that I'm overwhelmingly surprised at times, because, and I don't know, and you could tell me probably better because you're a lot of times at these tournaments, but like for me, if I show up at a tournament, I'm involved with my child. Obviously go talk to the parents. If there's other parents around, I interact with them too. I want to just let them all know that, like, just because I'm watching one of my players doesn't mean that I'm not going to like listen or talk. I might be watching, I'll talk, have a conversation, just being respectful. And then I just love sharing knowledge or information, but it is amazing, Lisa, the times that I have had, and I talked to JY before about this, like going to a tournament, we talked a long time ago about this, going to tournaments, and I unfortunately at this juncture, I can't go to every tournament like I was before I had my son, but that's kind of where I use Andy's racket stats and other things, or video stuff and whatnot to help with me still being as effective as I can as a coach. But it's amazing when I do go to tournaments and like sometimes I'm the only coach there.
Yeah.
And you go there and some parents are like, man, I wish my coach would come, and they're like, we spend so much money. They've never come to see my kid play, because they always come back going, well, what you see in practice isn't what they're doing there. And I said, yeah, it's so important. I told them, I said, well, it's a high school match. Even if it's a high school match and it's not a good team that they play against, it's just the fact that you're there showing them that you are supportive outside of the walls of your facility, I think is important, because I know when I was a kid, I had a coach, not the one who developed me. I had one kid right before him that was also part of my development, but before he moved away, he moved actually to San Diego, but before he moved away, I remember like he came and watched me. It was the first time in like 4 years he watched me. I was so excited. I played absolutely terrible because I wanted to make him so proud of all the stuff we were doing. I played horrendous. I mean, the guy I lost to did fine. He ended up playing at Illinois. This is years ago, my junior in tennis, but it was just a point that it meant a lot, and I know like
Right.
when I do personally go.
Well, and wait a minute, I want to stop you there because I think coaches need to hear that it means so much to these kids for you to show up and see them compete in a tournament. And let me tell you, it means a lot to us parents as well for you to show up, because then we know that you are truly invested in the success of our child.
Correct. Absolutely. And I think that's a thing. Like I was telling one of the ladies on another podcast, and I said one of my like holy grails is obviously going to tournaments when I can to see my players play, and then the other thing too is in a lesson I'm never on my phone. I'm fully engaged with my kids.
That would be a given, wouldn't you, Aaron? Like that if
It's one of
people
my
are
biggest pet peeves.
paying for your service, that you're going to give them your full attention for that hour, 2 hour period. Obviously, you're going to take a break, and that's fine. But I mean, that boggles my mind to see coaches on court with a group of kids, or even in private lessons, it's even worse, seeing them looking at their phone instead of watching what the kids are doing on court.
Lisa, that was at my job I was at for 12 years. I was like the villain because I literally incorporated my ownership to say no cell phone usage during group classes. That private lessons was used to their discretion, but on a group setting, because there was no way I could do a full, because I told them like when I grew up teaching tennis in the 90s, the cell phones were not like they are now. I'm like,
Right.
I had an office phone, as you know, the way it was, you'd pick up the phone and you have a voicemail of X, Y, and Z amount of people. You wrote down who you called back during your lunch period and so on and forth, and 24-hour return call. And obviously we're more accessible now than we ever were. But it's just one of those things where like I had a coach do that to me. And I think it's partial because of how it made me feel as a player, as you said. We're
Of
literally,
course.
it was my coach who developed me. And it was like probably a couple of years in, there was one time where he was on the phone 2 lessons in a row. I had an hour and a half lesson. But for 20 minutes, he's on the phone and he's hitting balls with the phone on. And I finally, and it's really, I'm not a confrontational person, but it's like, I'm comfortable with him because I've been with him so long. And I said, Coach, like, I understand. I'm like, I'm literally working 2 jobs to try to fund my tennis. And all I'm asking is for that hour and a half to give me all of you, because I'm here for you because of your knowledge and your care of like knowing what you do. And I respect you so much, but this I don't appreciate. And after that, he never touched his phone again, but I had to call him out on that. Yeah. I was like 16, 17 years old. I had to call him out on that. And because I told him, I said, like, anyways, I just told him like my whole like financial story. I was like, man, I'm doing everything I can to see you as much as possible so I can do my best. And all I ask is for you to give me 110% of you. So it's like for me, I'd always tell like when sometimes one of the things that coaches should come in and go, oh, if my next lesson cancels or whatever else, I'm like, all right. I don't know how where I live in that's like if someone cancels last minute, there's a 24-hour cancellation policy. So at the place I'm at now, they get 50% charge. My other club I used to be at was a full charge. Obviously they no show, it's a full charge. But I told them like, if your next lesson isn't showing, I go, you don't have to worry about it until that time of the hour comes. So if you go there and all of a sudden they're like, okay, where is Billy or Susie at? Then you could check your phone and they might say, oh, we're not coming or we're going to be late. And I told him, I said, for example, I said, the only time I've ever had my phone on me and was always checking my phone was when my wife was due to have my son. That was my only time. I said that was the
Yes.
only time I had my phone on me. Other than that, my wife and my parents are still living. They're in their almost 80. I told them, I go, if there's ever an emergency, they have my work number. So they call the front desk. So if I know the front desk comes to me, I know that it's serious. I do have to pick up my phone.
Sure.
So it's
Listen, there are exceptions to every rule, obviously. And in the case, your wife's about to have a baby at any moment,
yeah.
you just simply say to the kid and the parent who might be sitting there, look, my wife's due any minute. I'm really sorry. This is not my normal MO, but today I've got to keep my phone on me. I've done that in league matches, where I've said, I've got something going on. I'm really sorry. I've got to check my phone on the side changes, even though it's against the rules. Are you guys okay with that? And every single time people are fine with it if you tell them up front. But it's this constant checking their Instagram, checking their TikTok, whatever, instead of paying attention to what's happening right in front of them in the moment. That is problematic. And I love that you have a policy around that. Aaron, I hate to do this, but I got to wind us up because
absolutely.
This has been so helpful. And I really hope that if parents are listening to this one or players are listening to this one, that you will absolutely share it with the coaches that are working with you. I think this is an important podcast for every developmental coach to watch/listen to. And I want to just assure all of you guys watching and listening, we will have links to everything that Aaron has mentioned in the show notes on ParentingAces.com. So be sure and check that out. And Aaron, I know you said you recommend our podcast to the parents you work with. I hope you send them to our website as well, because we've got 14 years of articles on every aspect of junior tennis, from coaching to competition to college recruiting to the mental side to fitness to tennis technology, and everything in between. And I really hope that coaches are sharing that resource. I'm not making money doing this. This is a passion for me, as I've shared a million times. And I just want parents and families to have a great junior and college tennis experience. And so the more information we can share and the more people we can share it with, the better the experience for everybody.
No, well said, Lisa. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. I mean, what you're doing in that, like I said, from one passionate person to another, I can see passion, and I think that's something that if we all come together, coaches, parents, everything come together, I think we can make the experience for our kids better, and our U.S. tennis better because of it.
Absolutely. Aaron, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's great to see you and chat with you as always. To my audience, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.